Hello, it's Mark Lanier with your video thought for the day. This week, I'm looking at a Post-it note that I've kept on my desk for longer than I can remember because it's given me 5 things to focus on when I'm contemplating the day, when I'm working, etc. And these are things that I think are 5 charges that God gives us in our life. They're properly things that we should consider to live deliberately. To live intentionally and try to do what we should be doing day to day, as opposed to just living the humdrum, normal beat of life. And so I showed you these yesterday. If you missed yesterday, I talked about the first one, to love, but today is the second on my list, and it's to work. You say, work? What does that have to do with God? Well, actually, quite a bit. God made us to be industrious. God made us to do work. If you go back to the charge that God gave to Adam and Eve, it involved working the garden. It involved taking care of the things that God put under their control. That was a responsibility that they had. That's not a result of the fall. When Adam and Eve sinned and fell from God's Eden, they were still supposed to work. It just was going to be a lot more difficult. They would be working among thorns and thistles instead of in the midst of a delightful garden. So this idea is as old as time itself, that we are to work. I like the way Paul said it. In a letter he wrote to the churches around Colossae, which was a city over in what's modern Turkey. And in chapter 3 of that letter, a letter that was meant to be read in a lot of different churches, Paul says, whatever you do, work heartily. That's in the Greek, it's exsukes, out of your soul, ergodzisthe, work. Work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. Now, I want you to think about that for a moment. To work heartily, to work with your soul is maybe a more literal way of looking at the Greek from another angle. Exsukes is out of your soul, deep within you. Work as if you're working for the Lord and not for people. It's an interesting idea that the jobs that we have, the work that we do, we are called as believers to be doing it not simply to pay the bills, not simply to meet our obligations to others, not simply to become famous or rich, not simply to put food on the table. We are to work and work with all of our heart and soul because we're doing tasks that God wants us to do. You see, God calls us not simply to be, but there are good works, good things we should be doing that God has prepared for us to walk in. And Paul talks about that in his letter to the Ephesians, chapter 2, that there are good works, there are good things for us to be doing. And we shouldn't think that Paul's talking there simply about religious living. He's talking about everyday tasks and chores that we have to do. I was talking to a law school class recently, and one of the questions I was asked is, for incoming lawyers, how do you teach them to be successful in their legal career? And one of the things I told them, echoing this from Paul, is work heartily. Be known as someone who works really, really hard. Now, that doesn't mean you take it out of perspective, because if you're working heartily for the Lord, then you are going to keep your priorities straight. You don't become a workaholic at the cost of your family, at the cost of your faith, or things like that. But the idea of working heartily as unto the Lord it's biblical. It's what we ought to be doing. It's part of focused living. So I don't know what your work is today. Maybe doing laundry, maybe cooking, maybe changing diapers, maybe arguing a case in court, maybe all of the above, maybe being a student and learning to prepare for work. But whatever your work, whatever it is you're working at, do it heartily as unto the Lord. Focus on that today, and it'll make you a better person. It's your video thought for the day. More tomorrow. God bless you.